The date was 5th June 2022. It was a Sunday. It was in the Catholic Church. The name of the church was St. Francis Xavier Catholic Church Owo. It was in the morning hours. Worshippers had trooped into the church for the early morning mass usually celebrated by Catholics. The officiating priest was in, and the church service had just begun. The choir had taken their position. Persons selected for the day's readings were ready with the Bible in their hands for the liturgical assignment. Everyone was set for a moment of worship to their Creator. As mere mortals, none of the worshippers knew that in just a matter of minutes, the church would be attacked in the most brutal and most horrendous manner. Blood was to flow in all corners of the church in just a matter of minutes. Death was to be let loose on the worshippers. No age bracket, no gender was to be spared. It was murder in the cathedral. It was the least expected place for such infliction of death on innocent and harmless worshippers. It is what is today known infamously as the Owo Church Massacre. In Owo, in Ondo State of Nigeria, in West Africa, humanity was at its lowest and life was reduced to nothing. There was no fear for the divine. There was a plan, and the plan was to be executed no matter the cries from the victims. In this edition of Back in History, we remember the horror of the Owo massacre. Owo is a town in Ondo State of Nigeria. The massacre remains a sore point in the history of the town and in the history of Nigeria as a country. Welcome to this edition of Back in History. Owo is a relatively peaceful community in Ondo State, but on this day, its peace was defiled. As worshippers inside the church were attending Mass and celebrating the Pentecost Sunday, a group of gunmen entered the church disguised as worshippers, carrying bags that contained firearms. Another group took positions outside the church. What happened next was a sporadic shooting of the worshippers. The main entrance was locked by the gunmen, and the gunmen shot at everyone that moved. Videos of the inside of the church showed bodies of victims lying in pools of blood across the floor. After the attack, the gunmen fled using a stolen Nissan Sony saloon car. This church had never seen such a thing before. It was horrific. Families that dressed up in the morning to attend church could not go back home in the same number that they went to church with. It was really a terrible moment that people who went to the place of worship to receive succor and spiritual consolation ended up returning in body bags. Reverend Father Andrew Adeniyi Abayomi, one of the priests at the service, recalled the event as follows, quote, "I tried to protect parishioners. I remained in the inner part of the sacristy. I could not run as I was surrounded by children, while some adults clung to me. Some even came inside my chasuble. I shielded them just as a hen shields her chicks." End of quote. Another priest who had temporarily left the building prior to the attack said he was walking back to the church when survivors running outside stopped him and told him that a massacre was taking place inside the church. No priest in this diocese had ever witnessed such degree of inhumanity against fellow humans before, during the celebration of Mass. Done with their mission, the assailants flee from the church, and left behind by them was a pool of human blood. People were killed in their numbers. The shooting was sporadic and aimed at anyone at sight. For those that survived the attack, it was just a matter of luck. Some sustained life-threatening injuries and had to live with the injuries for the rest of their lives. Several VIPs visited the church to see for themselves what just befell the worshippers. One of the early visitors to the church was the then governor of Ondo State, Oluwarotimi Akeredolu, senior advocate of Nigeria. On 7th June 2022, 2 days after the massacre, the National Emergency Management Agency of Nigeria, NEMA, informed the public that a total of 22 bodies from the attack had been deposited in the local hospital mortuary. Some family members had opted to take their slain family members back home with a view to embalming the bodies in mortuaries close to them. The implication, therefore, is that more persons had lost their lives in the massacre. NEMA also stated that a total of 58 persons sustained various degrees of injuries and that the affected persons had all been taken for treatment. On 9th June 2022, the government revised the death toll to at least 40, saying that 61 injured survivors were still in the hospital. At least 5 children were confirmed to have been among the persons killed. Medical personnel attending to patients told reporters that the attack had caused a mass casualty incident and that the local hospitals were overwhelmed with victims. Governor Rotimi Akeredolu described the attack as, quote, violent satanic, end of quote. He also described it as, quote, a Black Sunday in a war. Governor Akeredolu vowed to, quote, commit every available resource to hunt down the assailants and make them pay, end of quote. Other government officials also visited the scene of the incident and condemned the attack in the strongest possible terms. The president of Nigeria at the time, President Muhammadu Buhari, condemned the attack and described it as, quote, heinous and totally unacceptable, end of quote. The Catholic Pontiff, His Holiness Pope Francis, condemned the attack and prayed for the victims who were, in his words, painfully stricken in a moment of celebration of the Pentecost. The attack made headlines across the world, with Catholic Charity Aid to the Church in Need issuing a statement that read thus, quote, ACN denounces this outburst of violence, yet another terrorist act in Nigeria, one more on the long list of crimes against Christians. The country in general has been rocked by episodes of violence, banditry and kidnappings that, although affecting all ethnic and religious groups in the nation, have led to a long list of major attacks on the Christian community over the last few decades. ACN calls on all political and religious leaders in the world to firmly and explicitly condemn this attack at the St. Francis Xavier Catholic Church, Owo, Ondo State, in southwest Nigeria during Pentecost Sunday celebrations, end of quote. In October 2022, Bishop Jude Oragundade of Ondo State backed a petition by the UK office of ACN asking the United Kingdom government to call on their Nigerian counterparts to bring to justice those responsible for the massacre and other similar atrocities. On 17th June 2022, a state funeral was held for the deceased persons. It was a terrible sight when the church was lined up with several caskets for the mass celebrated in honor of the deceased. There were cameramen everywhere, and the funeral service was beamed live to the view of the whole world. At the funeral service, Governor Akeredolu promised to improve the security situation in the states. Bishop Jude Oragundade of the Catholic Diocese of Ondo criticized President Buhari's government for, quote, empty promises regarding the maintenance of peace and prevention of terrorism. Bishop Emmanuel Badejo, who was among the officiating clergy at the funeral mass, demanded that the government should wake up, sit up, and act up to secure lives and properties all over Nigeria. A number of persons were later said to have been arrested, but up to the time of the making of this video, no one has yet been found judicially culpable for the attacks. The Owo Church massacre of 5th June 2022 was indeed the height of man's inhumanity on fellow humans. It was an attack to which history will not forget in a hurry. Many thanks to you all for watching this edition of Back in History, and do remember to always stop by to watch more videos on this channel. Also remember to subscribe to the channel and share the videos herein with friends and loved ones so that together we can have a community where we can regularly share the story of Africa and of the world.